Everybody who has ever lived and existed is going to get one chance for salvation according to God's timing. And God's timing involves not just one resurrection, but a couple resurrections. You see, many people's time will be when God resurrects the rest of the dead. When God resurrects the rest of the dead. Today is not the only day of salvation. Romans 11 and verse 32. He says, "For God has concluded them all in unbelief, that he might have mercy upon all." Now this little verse is somewhat troubling because it's a little bit hard to understand. It's a very powerful scripture that talks about God's mercy, and one of the ways God's mercy exists is that he shuts people up in unbelief, that he might have mercy upon them at a later time. Now this verse is talks about the elect of God, that some people's hearts are just blinded now. And there's some few who have been called now. You have the elect of God, but then you have a huge majority of people who have been blinded, shut up in unbelief. And listen, if your heart has been blinded by God, shut up in unbelief, there's not a thing you can do to change that. Not a thing. You will simply die in your self-destructive behavior. There's a lot of people who have been shut up in unbelief. And when I looked at this verse, for God has concluded them all in unbelief, that he might have mercy upon all, the question I had was, well, how could God blind man's heart and have mercy at the same time? It didn't make any sense. And I realized the answer was, it was not at the same time. It was not at the same time. It was not that God was going to blind people's heart and have mercy at the same time. You see, God can blind a man's heart today and have mercy on that same man at a time when the rest of the dead come back to life. Let's read it again. Romans 11 and verse 32. This is a powerful scripture if you're ever going to understand the love that God has for mankind. For God has concluded them all in unbelief, that he might have mercy upon all.
Is that really in the Bible? What you think is in the Bible is not.